this is Joan from Wrazel, and we have Rami here from Tikkun, all the way from Adelanto here at our Irvine headquarters. And he's going to be telling us a little bit about his company and what he does there and everything about it and the cannabis industry. So, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Tikun Olam, to give you a little bit of history and background, is a company that was founded out in Israel in early 2000s, about 2005. It was started as a volunteer project to research cannabis and cancer care, and as well as PTSD. Over the years, and as the company showed efficacy and that it actually worked, the government had no choice but to take somebody that was a non-profit, volunteer type of research into an actual commercial cannabis license.
Yeah.
And in 2005, Tikun Olam was awarded the first cannabis production license, which we know of in the world.
Wow.
So it was the first company to actually have mass production, cannabis capabilities out there from a legal standpoint. Since then, the company has expanded its research into autism, epilepsy, Crohn's disease, colitis, IBD, MS, fibromyalgia, and many other studies. We have about 15 published clinical studies to date. What's different about these studies too is that they actually tie into strain-specific products.
Okay.
And so we've actually taken a specific cannabis strain, bred it for its for its medical efficacies to improve its medical values, and actually did the studies on that. And so that's something that's a little bit different than what's out there today.
Yeah. What made you want to get into that?
I think when I started in the black market growing, I've been growing since 2005.
Okay.
And I think ever since then I realized that people can actually benefit, because you saw a lot of YouTube stories and you saw those little once in a while, because I used to dabble in cannabis a little bit here and there, with the homies and, kind of enjoy myself. And over some time, I actually had a friend of mine. I used to live in a very remote location, and he told me that my place was actually perfect for cultivating because it was up in a remote mountain location. That was a great environment. And so, yeah, sure, why not? This was 2005, and so, anybody who wanted to make an extra buck, why not? And it was legal. I was able to get a Prop 215, caregiver license, and basically provide cannabis to a dispensary. And over time, I started to realize how much it's helping people. And then I realized family around me can actually use it as well. I mean, I've lost some family to cancer. I've lost family to Alzheimer's. I've lost.
I'm sorry about that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I realized that there's people that can benefit from it. And I just think just imagine if I could have my grandmother or my aunt who can be still alive if cannabis had been so much further along today and not been stopped and put as a scheduled drug, and it was continued on in pharmacopoeia I think it went off pharmacopoeia in 1942 or something like that in the 40s. And so imagine we would have had 60 years of capability of research. We would have been having cannabis pills, and who knows, maybe my aunt or grandma would have been alive. And those are the things that kind of drive me in. And more recently, kind of shining into some of our studies, Tikkun has done a clinical study on children with autism. It was the largest conducted study out there at 188 children from 1 year old to 17 years old.
Wow.
And the results were drastic. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, not only did children have everything from rage attack improvements and all the symptoms, but also the ability to dress themselves, to eat on their own. And we had children that were nonverbal to verbal.
Wow.
Imagine having a child go to his mom and say, "I love you" for the first time.
Yeah.
Or say mama or papa. And those are things that, I'm a new father myself. It kind of drove me even further now. So my fuel just kind of gets renewed by seeing these and experiencing these great, mitzvahs, as we say in Hebrew, to improve people's quality of life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what drives me on.
I mean, that's a very humbling statement and mission, for your company. And I think, a lot of other cannabis companies can take initiative from that and do conduct those studies and everything like that, because it's extremely important, like you stated. You could help a lot of people.
I really wish they would. And, we were recently surprised. We thought there would be more people with studies out there.
Yeah.
We decided to kind of research that to find out, what's out there. Not from a competitor standpoint, but just hey, what's out there? How can we help people? That's... and we went with a professor at Vanderbilt University who did a research study and said that, hey, listen, we found about 7,300 studies on cannabis out there, but really only 8 of them actually tied to a specific product that you can actually take that the study refers to.
Okay.
Otherwise, you could take a cannabis product and, it could have all these claims, but you don't really know if it works or not. And so to learn that we were basically the only non-pharmaceutical cannabis company that you
Yeah.
can buy on the shelf, whether it's here, Florida, Delaware, Australia, Canada. And by the way, these are some places that Tikun Olam
Yeah.
is in.
That's
So,
great.
and kind of going back to the company's history, the company,
Yeah.
after 10 years in around 2013-14, went to Canada.
Yeah.
And was sold there under a MedRelief brand. And
Wow.
then in Australia, working on South Korea, Greece. So the
awesome.
company's, yeah, it's a global cannabis company.
Yeah.
So even though we're new to California, we're not a new company.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of something that we kind of try to, reiterate with people when they kind of learn about our company. Like, oh, okay, this is a new company in California.
Yeah.
We're not like we're new to California, but we're not a new cannabis company.
You're a global cannabis
Right,
company.
we're a global cannabis
Yeah.
company, which is a great thing because then people also feel, that they can trust us, and we've
Mhm.
kind of earned this title that's called us like the most trusted name in cannabis, which
Wow.
is a company that you can buy like a Kit Kat or Coca-Cola. You can go to Israel or Florida or Delaware, buy the same product and have the same consistent, relief from it.
Yeah.
And
That-
so
I mean, that's amazing.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, that's a very big achievement. And, people do need that type of consistency because let's say they are traveling and they need to get their medication and everything like that. They know with your product that it'll be the same. They're
Yeah.
not going to get any differences in dosage or anything like that.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of differences in cannabis. There's so many different strains, varieties.
Yeah.
There is something that I have noticed too. A lot of cannabis in the market today tends to be very similar because it's all been hybridized in the black market. I mean, so when I used to black market grow, I used to only care about the yield and how it looked or how it smelled. And I didn't care if down the line the symptoms were anxiety or those hallucinations or those rare, symptoms that you hear from cannabis.
Yeah.
Nobody cared about those per se. They just cared about how much money they got per pound at the moment.
Yeah.
And so because of that, you have a lot of breeding that was done that wasn't really for any medical purposes,
Yeah.
right? And so this is another thing that I find extremely different with Tikun Olam. Any breeding that we did was for medical values. It
Wow.
wasn't for the yield perspective or anything. In fact, I'll say that from a yield perspective, from a grower's life, it's very, low.
Yeah.
But that's what
It's
that's what it takes to
quality.
grow. It's quality. It's
Yeah.
the medical qualities that come in.
Do you think that the stigma that, the governments that have put on cannabis have really kind of pushed it back further than if it just naturally developed over the years?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I think that if we had that 60 years that the governments took away from us, I
Yeah.
think that I might have family members that possibly could still be alive from cannabis. I really feel that cannabis does have those hidden benefits to, that people say to, inhibit cancer cells and to do different magical things. And so, and I've seen it with my own two eyes on some patients. And so I very much believe that it was unfortunate that the government basically just set us back several decades.
No, absolutely, especially because, we were allowed to use opioids and medications, but not cannabis. And, if you look at it side by side, I think the world would have probably benefited more if cannabis was allowed to thrive instead of opioids.
Well, here I'll hit you more. There's not only the opioids, right, which they're given basically to everybody, whether they're adults or what have you. But as I've been more advocating, the autism research in cannabis and everything else, being experiencing it myself. Kids are getting antipsychotics. Like they're getting antipsychotic medications and everything else, and it's insane what they're giving children, considering that okay even, and not even considering something like cannabis, which to date has never harmed the human being.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario is that I've ever heard of cannabis is somebody had hallucination or anxiety. They went to sleep, they woke up, everything was okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
No, totally. I really respect that your company really did do those studies and kind of based the entire company on medical things instead of trying to just,
Sell cannabis.
Yeah. What is the most valuable lesson you've learned in scaling the organization? Because you are a global cannabis company.
Oh, it isn't easy.
Yeah.
Let's just put it this way. It isn't easy. I would say from an organizational standpoint, I mean, if we're really going to go to pins and needles, I would say that, trying to create a start from finish at every location from a global organization standpoint, it's kind of difficult. Trying to kind of centralize a global corporation that would handle more hub offices or using third-party resources would be very valuable.
Okay.
Things that would inhibit, inside costs from you. If you can use third-party costs, that can obviously offset from one another. I think that's, for scaling, it's very important.
Can you
Don't
give
try
examples?
to undertake, cultivation, right?
Okay.
So like the head of cultivation, I don't need a PhD of botany at every single grow facility. I can get one person and create the SOPs and standards and procedures, implement those at every facility, and then that way not have to have they'll set costs. Just
Yeah.
that was an example.
No, that's a great example.
In fact, we actually find that you want people with zero cannabis experience when you're starting large scale places, because then you can implement the SOPs. Because growers tend to be like chefs, right? And if you come and you tell a chef, hey, you cut your pickles this way, and now you want to cut them this way,
they're not going to want to do it.
He's going to tend to want to always kind of shift your angle a little bit, and so.
That's interesting.
Finding people that actually are just interested to get into business have actually found to be the most successful employees for the organization, because they're actually malleable, and you can you can kind of shift them and shape them to whatever success that you were able to create and just replicate it on them.
That's really interesting, because I see a lot of cannabis companies that want to just hire like master growers and like all these things. So,
a cannabis plant is a plant.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's hundreds, if not thousands, of genetics and species of plants out there.
Yeah.
And I find that you don't have to be a specific cannabis grower. No.
Yeah.
I mean, but if I did have my ultimate team, which I'm very proud to say I do, is a master, if you would. And when you say master, you say an experienced cannabis grower that's very knowledgeable from A to Z, meaning identifying, diseases and deficiencies in the plant. Knowing how to do, pest management and preventative maintenance, knowing all the ins and outs, and knowing the cannabis plant and knowing its biology and its nutrition and everything else about it.
Yeah.
That's what makes you, in my opinion, a master grower. When you have all of that knowledge, and you can look at a plant and immediately say everything about it, that's what I feel makes you, if you would a master grower.
Yeah.
I mean, it was even, so I come from computer engineering. That's my background and trade. Before I got into cannabis, I would wear a suit and program computers all day long. And I mainly got hired a lot because of my experience. I started building computers since the age of 12 years old.
Wow.
And when I had resumes that showed me working at LAUSD from 14 years old building labs, that kind of trumped anybody who came out with like a bachelor in science, when I was going and being hired at 20 years old and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's where experience comes in, and I think that that's important. But I will say that I did get a PhD botany as well for things like tissue culturing and things that are a little bit more advanced, if you would, that come into really molecular biology. That's where you want like a PhD with your master grower. That's like, to me, the superhero team.
I mean, that makes sense, because you'd want to add that extra level of expertise if you want to grow a certain level of cannabis.
Yeah, so definitely.
That's cool.
But we don't. And then even facilities, like, right, so you're not going to go spend $50 or $100 million in every single state or every single country that you go and build your brand. You take on a huge cost that way. So finding like-minded people, so like that's exactly what Tikun Olam did. So like in Canada, we were sold and partnered with MedRelief.
Okay.
In Australia, it's Medifarm. In Florida, it's VitaCan. And so because Tikun Olam is not just going to go, and you can't just spend $50, $100 million just to set up and go through the whole legal process and file for a license from the get-go under your name and organization name. You're just going to have to find partnerships and to do that. So if you want to scale up to become a global organization, third party is key. That's like whether it's partnering, whether it's outsourcing, all that different stuff.
I think that's a very good point to say, like, to build strategic partnerships with people, because then you can grow together and
absolutely. It's a big market.
Global.
Don't try to undertake the whole thing yourself.
Yeah.
I even in my lighting company, so I have also an LED grow light company.
Great,
for cannabis that I created. So I've got a little
kind
of everywhere, but even that I've always, when I came up with my patent for full spectrum and all that stuff, I kind of went out there and gave courses and seminars that really kind of gave all my secret sauces away.
Yeah.
And I did that because I said, okay, not one company can be the lamp delivery for every grow operation. That's ridiculous. There's no way you're supplying all of that.
Yeah.
And so that's where I said, let me spread the knowledge, and if I'm in my top 5 or top 10, I'm a happy camper. The industry is huge.
That's great. I mean, that's amazing.
I've never been one of those guys that needs it all.
Yeah. And like kind of being like, oh, I need to protect everything. I think giving knowledge away.
Knowledge
is
key,
really
and it only helps.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I think this is the first time I've really done an interview kind of saying that I've been doing all these things. So.
What are some of the challenges that you encountered that you didn't see happening?
Listen, you always think that things are going to cost you X, right? Because you come from you come from black market, you come from all these areas where you were able to do things much differently, and all of a sudden you go to a legal industry. Everything costs more, everything's much more complicated, everything just takes so much more effort, and I think that just thinking that it can just happen overnight, I think that's the biggest. You want it to happen overnight, but unfortunately it doesn't happen.
The plants don't even grow.
No, they don't. That doesn't happen either. And as much as you want to get product out now, it's going to take you 4 to 5 months.
Yeah.
So it's. I think some of the biggest challenging was just not anticipating the uphill battles. But I want to say that I'm actually happy with that, and I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, we're shaping a whole industry here. We're creating a whole industry that's huge. It ranges from, plastics and picks and shovels to hospital and bio, medical, pharmaceutical products. And so
No, absolutely.
that whole range and in between in the industry that it creates, I think we have to just be patient with it and kind of take the hits as it comes.
Yeah. So would you say I know California has like pretty high taxes on the cannabis
It does.
plant. So how does that compare with the other places that you're in, that Tikun Olam is in?
So that's very different, and this is where starts to become a little bit unfortunate, right? So let's say there's families that can't afford to even pay $60 for a tincture bottle, right? It's even if I'm selling it, let's say for $20, right? Which we need to maintain opening doors, right?
Yeah.
But the dispensaries then put the 24% tax, and then they want to multiply it by 100% and all that. Well, you already included your excise tax.
Yeah.
What more? Why do you need 100%, right? So we're really trying to push on some dispensaries to at least create medical programs to actually be able to give back to some patients and to kind of reduce the cost. But that's some things that I kind of have a little bit of a problem with. Whereas in Israel, and this is kind of the point, it's actually subsidized by the government there. So it doesn't matter if the doctor recommended you 100 grams or 300 grams there.
Okay.
It's the same 300 shekels, which is equivalent to about $100, cost to you as a patient. And then your health insurance also kind of reimburses you for that too.
Wow.
And so it's very different there. But
Yeah.
then imagine that from the producer's side. That it doesn't matter if I gave you 100 grams or 300 grams,
Yeah.
I got the same amount of money, right?
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, so that's why in Israel, the cannabis companies, it's very medical, and it's not a profitable thing. It's very medicinal. You have to have exhausted all of modern medicine before you even get access to cannabis.
Okay.
It's very different there. But this is where hey, this is where retail, let me squeeze every dollar I can, versus there where it's really more for the medicinal side.
Yeah.
So it kind of varies. We have been very big on patient programs and giving people access to cannabis, and giveaways and stuff like that. We've never shied away from that.
I mean, that's amazing. That's really great that you have instilled those principles from the beginning and are still sticking to those, as you grow.
We're very big on that.
Yeah.
Very big on that.
Great. Have you guys ever raised capital?
Yeah. The company's definitely raised capital since its inception, to grow. But me personally and our California operation, it was raising the capital amongst us as family members and partners when we created the venture and we raised capital. Definitely, I'm sure in the future, if we want to grow and go do more clinical studies and open clinics, which we want to do, those are things that will probably, incur probably some raising of capital, and there'll probably be some sort of opening, within our organization at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that's great. I was going to ask you about the challenges that you had raising capital, but I know friends and family, those challenges are going to be different than challenges
they
in the
come
market.
with different challenges, but
challenges nonetheless.
Well, I have gone and tried to raise capital, right, with cannabis, with my other cannabis companies and all that stuff. So I would say that the biggest challenges is that you have to explain to people that this is a whole new industry, and they always try to implement either a real estate model or some sort of other financial model into the cannabis business. And not always does it work.
Yeah.
Sometimes, depending on what you're doing within the cannabis business, right? If you're just going to build a facility and rent it out, of course, a real estate method, analogy, could work, right? But to an actual cannabis business, some of these other organizational methodologies don't really work, and some investors then don't see the opportunity when they just missed the opportunity.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
So I think that would be some challenges, is getting people accustomed to cannabis industry.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, though, this is kind of where some investors fall victims, because in the cannabis business, again, it's coming from a black market. And unfortunately, and I try to use this analogy, is there's a lot of frogs in the business, and not everyone that you kiss becomes a handsome prince.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's definitely a lot of frogs out there.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say. And investors have to be very wary. Look at that person's success. Look at what they've done before going investing with somebody that's in the cannabis space that invented something or has something unique.
Yeah.
That they're going to get into. I mean, I definitely think I've seen quite a lot of investor victims, if you would.
Really?
Yeah.
So what would be your advice to them, to add on to that?
Well, so let's say there's of course there's a couple different scenarios, right? So I've had investor that, let's say, wanting to invest in a cultivation facility.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so what does this cultivation facility have? What is the infrastructure of it? Is it really worth all this money? Because I've gone to some of these places that say they paid a lot of money, and really they're just 1950s old hoop houses that they're not really worth much. You can throw them for very little money, and they've paid all this money for it. The guy that's growing it, how long has he been there? How many successful harvests he had? Even if he was in the black market, what are some of the dispensaries that he sold to? How much track record does he have?
Yeah.
Track record, experience, right?
Got
so
it.
if the guy's like, hey, I have a facility because it's new, come invest and grow in it, that's going to be a little dangerous, because that's like relevant to like a guy with a degree who just came out of school, who has zero experience, and now you're going to let him touch something that requires somebody with experience because nobody's really done this before.
Yeah.
Right? And
no,
so
exactly.
that would be somebody who's getting into that. If you have an investor that's going into and invest into like a new product design or something, okay, research the product, what's out there, how much IP does it have around it? If you're gonna try to invent, another C-cell cartridge or another 510 cartridge, guess what? You've got some competition. You better invent something very, very unique, or you just want to feed the masses.
Yeah.
So there's different opportunities, but I just think that investors need to vet very carefully what they're investing in.
Yeah. And I mean, from what I've heard from you, it's a lot of the same as when you're looking at other opportunities. Look at their historical, in other industries, like looking at their historical background, doing your own research and everything like that. I think that's great advice. It's what we tell investors too. Like you really have to, you really have to be diligent and see what's out there. Yeah. So tell me about kind of all the products and the categories that you guys are in. So
our research, right, which is kind of what we're very big on, is going back to our research. And you have to think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, as Tikun Olam kind of started out, we really only had whole plant extract, right, which would be like tinctures, and smoking flower. We didn't have vapes yet, but vapes at least today give you kind of the closest similar effect to smoking. Yeah. So vapes, flower, and tinctures would be kind of our biggest products. At the moment, we are limited on flower because we created a soft launch batch, if you would, into California. We kind of launched about a month and a half ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. We're available in like 40, 50 shops.
Wow.
MedMen starting in early August as well.
That's awesome.
And we've very much focused on very medicinal-oriented shops at first, because we're kind of limited to about 100 some odd shops until October, November, when we have our first harvest, when we know we're going to harvest, right? And then we'll have a much more array of products and SKUs, but we will have everything from capsules, teas, transdermal patches. We have topicals, lotions. Those are available today too. Topicals are.
That's great.
We plan on doing everything from like RSO. Our tinctures are actually with an avocado oil, something that's very different that we found that nobody's really using, and that comes from knowing the fats that are in the avocado oil are much more absorbent into the body as opposed to like a coconut oil or an olive oil. So the oil absorbs much better into the body, and then your bioavailability from the cannabinoids is higher.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
So that and we also have an orange peel extract, so it's very flavorful. We've won a lot of awards with our tinctures. Yeah. Our CBD vapes, our Avidecal product, which is our high CBD, that's the one that's been used like in anti-inflammation, in the autism, epilepsy, all that stuff. That one has won awards for the best CBD vape pen, best CBD product throughout California. So we've even found ourselves playing in like the recreational market. Like we went to High Times Festival, where you wouldn't expect to see a very medicinal cannabis company, but it was in our own backyard. It was in Adelanto, so we had to go. And then we also went to another one where Ice Cube was showing, and because he's very big on autism support, we definitely wanted to go out there and have some synergy and awareness and stuff like that. And we won first place, second place, and third place in many different varieties. But it was nice to take home quite a few trophies. You submit 3 products, you get 3 awards. It's like cool.
Well, congratulations.
So that was very nice, and it makes me more humble to know that people will accept this product. People do recognize it. And when people hear the story and the information, they love the product.
I already love the product and haven't even tried it. So I think that's a very good. Very good.
It's a great product. So, and another thing I'll touch base on is like, we're here in the cannabis industry for so many years. Again, we're smoking kind of the same cannabis over and over, and all of a sudden these strains that came from the other side of the world are kind of like refreshness or new flavors to our Baskin Robbins, if you will. So where I'm used to smoking like Jack Herrera or Blue Dream Haze during the day, our Alaska, which is our sativa high THC, is like my every day,
favorite.
all day. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my focus, anti-anxiety type of. And people actually get surprised, like, why would you say sativa is an anti-anxiety? So
Yeah.
our sativa research, or at least with our Alaska strain,
Yeah.
so our Alaska product,
Mhm.
we had a 3,000 patient study that we did on just normal day-to-day symptoms.
Okay.
And the people that suffered from anxiety, Alaska actually ended up ranking as one of the highest relief strains and products that these people saw relief from anxiety.
Wow.
And it was a sativa, high THC sativa.
Yeah.
And really, as you get more and more down to it, it comes down to, again, the breeding. What people did here with sativas and the strains is not going to be the same as what the sativa that's much more landrace origin or heirloom, if you would, another word for it, is not going to do the same effects. So these strains really they do what they say to do. There is the data to back them up, and that's those are the things that are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Marketing challenges for us are really more of getting the medical information out, how we're allowed to word it legally, and all that stuff. We're fortunate in California that we are actually allowed to say relieve symptoms of.
Okay.
So we're actually allowed to say that this product here will relieve symptoms of, like, Crohn's disease.
Wow.
When you have a 90% success rate on Crohn's with 45% remission within 3 months, that's amazing. Like,
yeah, no, absolutely.
I know a lot of females and people in my life, and my own brother who suffers from Crohn's disease, and it has helped them dramatically.
That's amazing. I mean, see, I wouldn't have never known all that information. So, what you say as your marketing challenge, getting the information out, I think that's, like, extremely important, and I hope that's
it's the
what
biggest
we can
problem,
do,
yeah.
like, with you here today.
I appreciate it, because it's like when I go out there to, like, a dispensary, most cannabis companies, like, okay, yeah, we have this high THC, it's cool, here's our cartridge, and this is how we make and this is the process. Okay, there's always so many processes, right? And so between all the companies, the dispensaries constantly just hear the same thing. And all of a sudden we come in and we have, like, a research book this big, and, like, all these flyers and information that has all this knowledge, and it's like, how do you convey that to the bud tender now?
Yeah.
And so we have, like, training programs that we go through to really kind of break into people, first the company information, the products, and then how to guide the bud tenders to utilize the research books to find what that patient needs. So if a patient comes in and say, hey, I'm suffering from this and this, what do you recommend?
Yeah.
The bud tender has a quick guidebook that say, for this disease, this is what they recommend.
Wow.
Here was the summary of that study. So, out of 300 patients, so-and-so saw relief by using it this way. And so that way they're able to convey that to the patient. Now the patient, can say, okay, great, I want to read the study further. Or B, let me get the product.
Yeah.
Right? And so those are things that we're trying to trying to get that out there. But that's the biggest challenge for us, is getting all that research, all that decade of information, and trying to get that to that, and especially because, you're dealing with a lot of young kids, and a lot of them, partake in recreational cannabis use, and so it's kind of hard for them to grab all that information so quickly. So it's a little bit of repeat process,
Do you guys put some, like, informational pamphlets or something in your product packaging or something like that?
So that's one of the things that dispensaries definitely love about us, is that we come in with, like, for them it's a great thing, because now they've been looking for things to show patients medically, but there's nothing out there that can actually give people medical kind of tips, if you would. So we do have, like, a whole 6 volume of an introduction to cannabis. Wow. Like, if you're a first time user, okay, how do I use cannabis for wellness? What is the endocannabinoid system? What are the different methods of intaking cannabis? What are the cannabinoids that are out there that I should know about?
That's amazing.
And it's really it's really a simplified way without pitching our product, and none of that content that we say buy Tikkun or do Tikkun or anything Tikkun. We just simply break the information in very basic text and content and language that's not medical or too complicated or anything like that. We want to just be very simple, very basic, down to earth. So we definitely come with that, as well as all the research books and summary of our studies. We also have it all available on our website. So on the trytikkun.com, we have all of our medical research. So if somebody wants to go read the medical research, it's not like it's not like I'm doing this to the medical research. You can't see it. No, it's all public information. It's published in European journals. It's published in many places, and so the access is there. Our goal is just to get that to the patient's hands.
That's great. I was going to ask you if it's available online.
It's available online,
amazing.
It's definitely available online.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I'm going to go and read some of that stuff after this.
Definitely, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I learned a lot. I'm a connoisseur person in the industry, and I've learned a ton, ever since I've obviously been more involved with the organization itself. I mean, I've been involved with the organization for the past, in depth for California, past 2 years, but I've been kind of chasing, if you would, the Tikun Olam dream for the past 4 years, and
Yeah.
working with the organization in Israel and trying to bring them out to California.
I mean, that's awesome. That's a great achievement for you to finally be here.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. I mean, I definitely knew that if I got into it, and this is why I kind of stayed in the picks and shovel business, is because there was so many kind of competition, so much noise, and that I didn't really want to just be another I don't know, anthill, or I don't know, that's probably a bad reference, but
No, I
like,
understand
just
what
another
Yeah.
another of the same thing. I
Yeah.
wanted to be something unique and different.
Yeah.
And Tikkun Olam to me was like, oh my God, this is the holy grail.
Yeah. And you sound very passionate about it. So
Extremely,
that's really
extremely.
Great. Yeah.
I'm very passionate about the things I do. I'm very fortunate to never feel like I work. I
Yeah.
feel like between my LED grow light company and the Tikun Olam and everything else that I do, that I don't work a day in my life. And I think that people that are in the cannabis space and they want to go from that black market and kind of become, in the professional world, it's just it's a dream come true. So
No,
I
that's
think
amazing.
people should
Yeah.
chase it. If they,
Yeah.
don't think that just because it's cannabis, I shouldn't, and maybe
Yeah.
somebody's going to be disappointed in me or something.
Mhm.
I had a family member that used to be disappointed because they used to know that I dabbled in cannabis at a young age.
Yeah.
Okay, today that same person is extremely successful in the cannabis business.
That's so funny.
So it's like, yeah. Where was the credit back then?
Yeah.
Like,
you're like, I knew it from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I had my, I guess off subject, but I think I was talking to Shelly about this, I think on the phone, but, when I started growing in the canyons out there,
Yeah.
I've had all kinds of shit happen. I mean, I had the Mexican mafia like knocking on my door because they wanted to offer me security, because they found my cultivation, and it's
They want to offer you security.
Yeah. They were like, yeah, so we found your grow operation, and you need security up there. And I kind of was like surrounded by like a bunch of mafia guys and Suburbans and.
How did you
guns.
handle that?
I was just thinking with my brain, and I said, that's not a bad idea, but I do have some business partners. I do need to get. Can I give me 24 hours and then we can meet again?
You can circle back.
Right. So, because I just need to put myself out of that situation.
Of
I was like
course,
in the middle of a Home Depot parking lot, like
Yeah.
in the middle of like in Sun Valley, like in a bad
Oh,
position.
that's scary. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I only had one friend that was willing to come with me, and I won't mention his name, but that
Of course,
guy, he
yeah.
knows who he is, and a lot of love for him.
Yeah.
And it was definitely an experience. But
well, it's good that now you're like on the other side.
well, and so here I'll give you the kicker. The kicker in the story before we get back to the interview
Yeah.
questions is that my wife, who back then we were boyfriend girlfriend, her brother came from Israel at the time to stay with us because she lived with me, and
Yeah.
her brother came to stay. And I told him, I said, listen, this is a very remote place. There shouldn't be anybody up here. Like, there's only some fire access trails that sometimes people off-road.
Yeah.
And if you see somebody, just ask them to kindly leave, and that is private property. And one day when he was alone, and I got to see all these on my cameras too afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like seeing all this. I'm like, and he goes outside when these two guys roll up with ATVs, and he goes out there. He had some tats, long hair, and he's got like a cannabis joint with him, and he goes and starts talking to these guys, right? And like, of course, not knowing that these guys are like mafia, soldiers
Yeah.
or whatever you want to call them. Like, they obviously see some young guy in the mountains with cannabis.
Yeah.
1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
So they basically waited for us to like be gone, and then they came up there, and that's how they found my cannabis operation.
God.
But so my brother-in-law, and this is the kicker, is that he felt bad. He like couldn't even.
Aw.
He wouldn't even look me in the face because he knew like he destroyed my whole operation. Because the same night I basically packed up and left.
Yeah.
So after I got out of that meeting
Wow.
with those guys, I basically went up to my house from up the hill, packed up all my stuff, and like I had to like get away from like their cars that were following us and all this stuff, and
It's
kind
so
of
scary.
and for like 2 weeks I'm like so depressed. And what happens? The big California fires that like burned all the way up to that canyon burnt my house down, burned everything down,
Oh my God.
and like here I
Wow.
am like 2 weeks later, like just like
That's a
and
blessing
now,
in disguise.
Oh, and my brother-in-law was like, you see, I was supposed to save you. I came from above. I'm the good energy for you. And like ever since that, I couldn't be mad at him.
Of
Like,
course not.
Like, I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Well,
so
that's,
anyway, that's one of
that's
my
crazy.
beginning growing days, and that's how it all the growing kind of went
Yeah.
from one house to another and setting up grow operations. And
now to here. Yeah.
now I'm here from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's-
to think
that's
about
a
that
crazy
long,
story.
it's definitely a rough beginning, but
So, which Tikun Olam accomplishments make you the proudest? From when you've been there, like stuff that you've accomplished, and the company itself.
Honestly, I think that the biggest thing is getting in front of these families and patients and seeing how their quality of life has improved so much.
Wow.
And experiencing that, like with my own mom, for example, let's say my mom is 70 years old, she'll wear smiles every day, but her hip hurts here and there, and to see like my topical actually help her, you know, and to see the same thing happen like with my grandfather and other people and the children that I spoke about, that, you know, I actually had a mom literally that I gave her some product, her kid tried CBD isolate for 2 years, was not successful. I said, you know what, try our Avideco CBD. She's like, I tried CBD, it doesn't work, you know. Try this. We've tried it on a lot of kids. We've used it. Try it. She calls me after 2 days. She's like, my son spoke.
Oh my God.
And so like when you hear those things, I mean, I think that is the biggest achievement, because not only have you impacted that child's life, you've impacted the mom, the dad, the brothers, the sister. You know, I have kids that were not physical friendly, like with autism, so they don't let their siblings touch them. All of a sudden to doing wrestling matches with their siblings. Wow. And like those are like the experiences that there's no words to explain them. And while we're definitely helping elderly, palliative cancer care, and to help people get through the chemotherapy and all that stuff, and to have all the other symptoms, to me, especially as a new dad, I mean, that the children's stuff to me is insane, and I wish that I can overnight be in front of every autism association and just be like, you guys need to give this a chance. You're not going to harm your child. You need to give it a chance and see how it can improve his life and your life and everybody else around you.
Have you contacted any organizations?
We're trying, and you know what, unfortunately, like some of them, it's the taboo. It's cannabis, I'll never touch it. Nobody's ever have any research or studies on it. And I'm like, no, we have a clinical study. And I try to get there, but a lot of people, you know, that's the only unfortunate that I have. And as a new dad, it like angers me. Like, how dare you not try this? How dare you like be so closed-minded and not even give it a look-see? You know what I mean? To like even look it over and read the research, and you know that's.
If you were saying there's research, it's like they could at least look at it.
I didn't ask you to try it. Look at the research, and then that's kind of been, I think, the biggest thing. But as far as what I love doing is that. That's my biggest accomplishment in the company, and I think the company, the tens of thousands of patients whose quality of life we've improved, I think that's the company's heart and soul.
I mean, that's amazing. Have you thought about what it would take to actually get people to you know, even just look at your research? Do you think just like more adoption? Do you think the recreational side of the market, does that help you when you're talking to do you think it would help you when you're talking to companies like that, because they would see cannabis more around them? Well, and those are the things that we're doing, and you know, we're going out there, and so we have an autism spokesperson that goes around to these places that does speaking at events. That's great. We'll bring like nurses and actually like go out and try to like bridge that access. Say, hey, you want a doctor to help you, you know, find a cannabis regimen for you. You know, and so we try to create those bridges. You know, we try to bridge that gap. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not, so, you know, but we keep trying. We don't give up. And so we keep going out there and just spreading the word. That's all we can do at the moment. And pushing forward. And pushing forward, right? A step forward is better than no steps taken, you know, so that's great. Speaking where you have doctors that are pediatrics, all that stuff, that's how we create awareness, because then that one doctor, right, can speak to all the parents. So you got to try to find those, you know, avenues that kind of open up and go to spread out. You got to figure out how to spread out. And you'd be surprised how one mother's dramatic story on social media can bring all of a sudden tens of thousands of patients of awareness, and then that brings awareness and so forth. And that's really kind of. And her telling her friends, you know, this helped my child and everything like that. So even just selling one product will still have that effect, that branching effect. So that's really great. Facebook, Instagram, Google. I felt that. You know, the social media and internet stuff, the whole net neutrality and the whole, you know, sensitizing, you know, cannabis stuff, I think that's ridiculous. I find that these companies should all be ashamed of themselves. I personally feel that Instagram has become a soft porn site. I think that all those companies that are allowing kids to be practically naked, and some of them you do see things, and I don't understand how they don't catch that, but like the fact that they allow that, but they won't allow cannabis, it's ridiculous, and I think that social media is completely upside down, and it's really what tears the fabric of society. And you're referring to the fact that cannabis companies can't like advertise or anything on any of those platforms, which most people sell on those even platforms. On my lighting, even on my lighting. I'm showing lights for growing. I'm showing people how to save money and grow efficiently, so they don't have to spend retail money and grow on their own. Like I'm contradicting my other business, right? But that's not what I'm about. I'm about
helping people. And
Yeah.
so
No, absolutely.
I find it ridiculous
Yeah.
that they've done that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a very big difficulty in the cannabis industry right now.
Yeah.
Is you can't market in regular
Yeah.
avenues.
So much worse things are allowed in their standards, and it's just
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Where I
Yeah.
used to think social media was like the rebel that'll help us, break through government barriers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's become worse than government.
Over time. Yeah. Wow.
Some people think that the vaping might disappear all in all. I don't.
Really?
We don't know what the long-term effects are from it. You think about it from a scientific perspective, right? So from like a scientific perspective, or for what we know scientifically,
Yeah.
from the technology side, I've always learned that outgassing, so chemicals and compounds and different components can give off residual combust or give off residual chemicals. And so from day one, when vapes were around, when category testing wasn't even around, I used to be like, oh my god, this doesn't have an outgassing report, doesn't have any testing or anything else. There hasn't even been outgassing yet, but what they do is in the category testing, where you do get to see the heavy metals and lead and all that, we don't know what the long-term effects are.
Yeah.
Yet the testing that we're doing in the parts per billion, and it's just 0.00, really walking across the street near a freeway or driving down with your window down the freeway is technically worse than that.
Yeah.
So scientifically, it almost seems like
It seems okay.
It seems okay,
Yeah.
but we still don't know. It's still very early on.
Yeah.
And
you're talking about vaping concentrates, because there's also
Right.
vapes that just kind of heat the flower and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Then there's the vapes
Yeah.
that heat the flower and all that stuff. We don't know if there are any long-term effects, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely love the vape technology. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. As a corporate person, as a person who runs multiple businesses every day, I love smoking, and I can function perfectly all day with it.
Mhm.
It's just stopping and rolling a joint for 20 minutes, or even because going to the exercise, or even pre-rolls.
Yeah.
Even if I had a pre-roll, it's like spending 20, 30 minutes to smoke it,
Yeah.
Whereas a vape, I could be on my keyboard in front of my computer and be like, tick, 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 vape,
Yeah.
tick, 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 vape, and I can keep going. And it's just, so I love the vape technology.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. It's the best thing ever.
I think we've seen it become, I think with nicotine vapes and everything like that, with Juuls, I think that's been proven that,
that's bad.
That's bad. And
That's
in the sense where, the nicotine concentrates and everything like that are just so much higher.
Well, the synthetics
Yeah.
that go into that are just
Exactly.
horrific, and,
Yeah.
and that, I believe, is something that needs to stop. I'm
Yeah.
not a big fan of that. To create an easier way to kill yourself with nicotine and cigarettes,
And that's something that I see the cannabis industry kind of combating is tobacco use. Do you see that yourself?
Listen, I'm. This is a great subject. I'm sure if my wife saw this, she'd probably be laughing right now because she's a smoker, and she's transitioned to a very light smoker because of me, because I'm not a cigarette person.
Yeah.
I'm like a anti-cigarette. I can't even stand to be around the smell of cigarettes. Look, I think the fact that they're still around, they even got away with saying, "I'm going to kill you" on the box.
Yeah.
So are they going to go away? Probably not.
Yeah.
They'll probably stay where they are right now.
Yeah.
Maybe more states might have less smoking, but
yeah. Well, maybe would you say maybe younger kids? Kids experiment as growing up. Do you think they would still just do both, or?
I think it's a personality issue, and I think that whether somebody's going to try cigarettes, weed, alcohol, or whatever, it's a personality thing.
Okay.
And I think it's how that person is raised. I know people that decided to be those people that never drank or never had anything their entire life.
Yeah.
I know people that had everything in between, and I know people like myself who I've only smoked weed in my entire life.
Yeah.
I've never done any other drug. I've never tried anything except weed. And I think that everybody is a personality thing, where people will say weed is a gateway. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
Because I never want and don't want to try or have any desire to try any other drug.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like that's a gateway. I think it's bullshit. Cigarettes. I hate them, but unfortunately, they're probably going to stay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with that.
The more areas ban them, the better.
Yeah. Where do you see the cannabis industry going in the next 5 years?
It's funny. I was asked this by another agency, and I was saying I think that some of the biggest challenges that we have are the unknowns. Is number one is who's going to govern us, right? Because all these states have these private, state-run agencies that are kind of governing the cannabis. They're not really governing it, they're just giving us the applications, right? And once in a while you might have a site inspection, but to govern an actual organization, it's not kind of happening.
Yeah.
Is it going to be the Department of Agriculture? Maybe. How's that going to be like? is when the federal laws that everybody's talking about going to be lifted, they're saying all the states are going to be able to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Does that mean that one state might allow import and export? Does that mean that, and so what are these kind of challenges that are going to happen? Imagine that one day California decides that, oh, you guys can export. And then Florida says, guys, you can import. Like, just imagine what all of a sudden can happen. So I think the fact that we don't know who's going to govern us, we don't know what restrictions are going to be set on us from a geographical perspective too. I think those are two big factors that we don't know.
Yeah, a lot of unanswered questions.
Those are my mind. I think are some of the biggest. Is who's going to govern us, and are we ever going to be allowed to move past our state/USA?
Yeah. And those are the most important.
Those are the most important. And banking, of course. Look, banking. I think banking is going to loosen up. It's a matter of time. You already have the state credit unions that you can go to and all that, and it's kind of and you see the administration trying to push bills to allow the access to start using federal banking system. So I'm pretty sure in the next year or two that problem would get solved. Now after the banking issues get solved, now who's going to govern the industry?
It's crazy because it's just, and then eventually it'll just explode, because then all those answers will be, all those questions will be answered.
And you have all the more acquisitions and takeovers and all this stuff, and so the even though it seems like a lot of big money is being made now, it's just very early in the industry. It's very early.
Agreed. So what, if any, what advice would you give to a growing cannabis company?
Well, I think it'll also depend on what part they're in, So if you're in cultivation, right, having those, boutique verticals, 20,000 square foot licenses. If you're in California, I'm sorry, you're not gonna upkeep with the massive greenhouses that are being, put up there. Unless you have something so special that nobody else can replicate it, and you're in the boutique, then you might be able to last. But I think being boutique has its days numbered. I think that you need to either go big or go home, unfortunately. I think that if you're creating product, how do you differentiate yourself amongst the industry? Because only more and more products are going to roll out. There's 4,000 unprocessed applications. Just imagine. Wow. Just imagine that. Let's say half of those are brands, or even 10% of them. There's that many more brands out there. It's a lot of brands. For such a state, even though we're the sixth largest economy or fifth or whatever whatever the statistic is at the moment. But I think that those are some of the big challenges that people will have, is creating the differentiation between themselves. What makes you different, right? Why you? Right? Because some people have already established their market share space. Yeah,
absolutely. So that would be the biggest thing that they should answer immediately when thinking about even starting it, and then as they grow.
Yeah. And it's why, for myself, even as I got into Tikun Olam and bringing Tikun Olam, it's like, okay, if I'm going to get into growing legally, what's going to make me different than Jack Herrera, Blue Dream, and SVOG and all these other strains that I'm going to, so bringing Tikun Olam, that was definitely something different. If you were to go and you want to do cultivation, I tell you to go around the world, find something that's different. We already know what all the cannabis strains out here, and everybody's got them in all the different varieties and forms. So whether you have a special process of of a delivery method, right? I've had this one guy show me how he's got bees eating the cannabinoids and basically going in with the honey. They basically mix the cannabinoids, so you have natural honey / cannabinoids from a bee. Okay, that's a unique product, right? So I will tell you, okay, that's unique, right? You can micro business that, you don't have to go mass scale. So, but though, if you're gonna say, hey, I'm just gonna sell a jar of an eighth with a fancy label, I'm gonna tell you better have a very fancy label. It better be a gold. Yeah, exactly.
So, what would you say is the best way for an average person to capitalize on the cannabis industry?
So, if it's somebody who's a non-investor, I would say, find where your expertise are, right? See, what are you good at that can apply to the cannabis industry? Because you have people, whether it's political, whether it's handyman, whatever it is, that could fit in the cannabis industry. So find what you're good at and apply it into the cannabis industry. If you're somebody who's new and is just coming out of school and you're an 18-year-old, find out what are those passions that you like doing? Where do you see your hobbies? Whatever your hobby is, right? Apply that to being your career. Because creating a hobby into a career is that's the dream come true type of life.
Which is what you did.
Which is what I did, The investors that are out there, definitely there's a ton of opportunities. So many of them exist. I would say to always look at the people you're investing with, see what their history has been, what have they done that was successful, and how do you feel that differentiate. Do some research, don't just throw money on it. I've seen people do that. I've seen people get into bad partnerships, definitely something that's important besides like the history of that particular person, right? Is like, has that person had any relationships, and have those relationships been like references, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like just like you would reference somebody for payment, right? You'd reference somebody for their character skills.
Yeah.
And say, hey, is this somebody that I can work with?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that you say that, because we recently did like a segment, a tips and tricks segment, and that's what we talked about. We said historical, look at the team, and we didn't say references, but that's something to really think about. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that if I was investing, okay, you did all this great. How many partners have you had? Great. Okay, so why are you alone?
Yeah.
Right? Why are all those partners gone? Because if you were successful,
yeah,
right, you would normally still have some partners that still want to be with you.
Yeah.
No matter who they are.
No, absolutely.
Unless you're telling me, hey, I'm an antisocial guy, antisocial, and I'm ADHD. But that still doesn't make sense, right? Because, again, you would still have one of those investors possibly with you. Yeah. Because you have a good track record. So those are things that would be like red flags.
That's great.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know?
So what do you know about Wrazel so far?
Listen, I know it's a publication that definitely seems to do what we talk about, which is bridging the gap between the knowledge of the cannabis, the exposure to making cannabis not taboo, basically. Bringing that, hey, this is cannabis. This is like, like your beer or your water bottle. It's no different than this Kirkland water bottle, and we're trying to bridge that knowledge and that gap. And by bringing people like me and letting me speak and bringing our stories, you guys are doing exactly that, which is exactly what I say is the challenge, and you guys are definitely helping companies like mine solve those challenges, and that bringing the knowledge to people, because I'm sure the amount of people that see this, out of all of them, I'm sure that 90% of them have some sort of symptom or ailment, or somebody in their family that whether it's a joint pain or whether it's knee, they can actually say, oh, you know what, here's a cannabis product that now I can go and actually read some data about and be able to and see relief from. No,
absolutely. And we do want to really just put out that knowledge for people and try to get exposure for other businesses like yourself and everything like that, because it is important. People just need to know, and there isn't really a big media partner that would do that. And
no, there isn't. Honestly, it was very quick for you guys to call me and allow me to come and share the story. So I must say that's also been a great experience.
That's
definitely
great.
With Wrazel, is that if you have a good story, call Wrazel and they'll help you get it out. You know what I mean? So that's something that I think is a very big deal. Also for you guys as a publication. I think that's something that in a very short time that we've known each other was an experience that I definitely got. So
great. I'm really happy to hear that, because that's what we want to do.
Awesome.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about Tikun Olam and kind of share with everybody that you really, really want to hit the nail on?
I will say that, as I said, baby, I think the perfect thing to say is exactly what I just said, which is if you have somebody that needs to improve their quality of life, somebody that you can help with, whether it's your family member, whether it's a relative, a friend, if you know that they're suffering from some sort of ailment or symptom, which we have a study for, I beg you to go and take a look at it and give it a chance, because a lot of our success rates are like, in the 70, 80s, and 90 percentile. So we're not like dealing with stuff that, it might help you. This has a high chance of helping you. And so I really think that people should take advantage of all the research that we've done and all the experience and all the years, I think that's
And where can they find that information?
So on Tikun Olam's website, which is, we have a few of them. So one of them is trytikun.com, and the other one is tikunolam.usa.com, which is tikunolam.usa.com.
Okay, perfect. I mean, thank you so much for coming in. I learned so much about so many different things. So I really, really appreciate it, Rami. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.